It's 3 in the morning, and you're staring at the ceiling again. Your eyes have been open for the past 2 hours, your mind racing through tomorrow's to-do list, last week's conversation you wish you'd handled differently, and a vague sense of dread about absolutely nothing in particular. You're not anxious exactly. You're not sick. You're just awake. And if you're in your 40s, especially if you're a woman, there's a very good chance you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've been struggling with sleep lately, please subscribe to the channel, because understanding what's happening in your body right now could be genuinely life-changing. The culprit behind your sleepless nights isn't stress, isn't your phone, and isn't the coffee you had at 4 in the afternoon. Well, okay, the coffee probably doesn't help, but it's not the main villain in this story. The real reason you can't sleep is something far more biological, far more predictable, and surprisingly, far more fixable than you might think. And it all comes down to one hormone: progesterone. Progesterone is one of the most important hormones your body produces, and for most of your adult life, you've probably never given it a second thought. It works quietly in the background, doing its job without fanfare or attention. But starting around the age of 35, and accelerating significantly once you hit 40, your progesterone levels begin a slow, steady decline. By the time you're in your mid-40s, you might be producing 20 to 30% less progesterone than you were in your 20s and 30s. And this isn't a small change. This is a fundamental shift in your body's chemistry, and your sleep is one of the first things to suffer. So what exactly does progesterone do? Well, it does a lot of things, but when it comes to sleep, it's nothing short of miraculous. Progesterone is what we call a natural sedative. It binds to receptors in your brain that calm down your central nervous system. It lowers your core body temperature slightly, which is essential for sleep onset. It stabilizes your sleep architecture, meaning it helps you spend more time in deep, restorative sleep, and less time in that shallow, easily interrupted stage where you're aware of every sound your house makes. Progesterone also regulates something called your sleep-wake cycle, or circadian rhythm. It helps ensure that when it's bedtime, your body actually gets the memo and starts winding down. When progesterone levels are healthy, this whole system hums along beautifully. You feel sleepy when you're supposed to. You fall asleep relatively easily. You stay asleep. You wake up feeling somewhat restored. It's how sleep is supposed to work. But when progesterone declines, this entire elegant system starts to break down. Your brain doesn't get the signal to calm down at night. Your core body temperature doesn't drop as much as it should. Your sleep architecture becomes fragmented. Instead of sleeping in consolidated blocks, you might sleep for 2 hours, wake up, lie awake for 45 minutes, sleep for another hour and a half, wake up again, and so on. This is called sleep fragmentation, and it's absolutely exhausting, because even if your total sleep time seems adequate, the quality is terrible. You're not getting the deep sleep your brain and body desperately need. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so my progesterone is lower. Can't I just take more? Why isn't this being talked about more? The answer is complicated, and it involves some unfortunate gaps in how we approach women's health. For decades, progesterone was primarily discussed in the context of birth control and hormone replacement therapy around menopause. The broader role of progesterone in maintaining health and quality of life across the entire female lifespan wasn't prioritized in medical research or training. That's changing now, thankfully. But there's still a significant lag between what the science shows and what most doctors routinely screen for or discuss with their patients. If you've mentioned to your doctor that you're not sleeping well, chances are you've been offered a sleeping pill, told it's stress, or simply not taken seriously. It's rare that someone says, let's check your progesterone levels and see if that might be the issue. The decline in progesterone isn't sudden, it's gradual, which is why you might not have connected the dots. You're not going to wake up one day at age 39 and suddenly be unable to sleep. Instead, you might notice that sleep becomes a little bit harder over a period of years. You need one more pillow to get comfortable. You wake up more often. You feel less rested, even when you technically got 7 hours. You might start waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning and not be able to fall back asleep. Many women describe this as their sleep becoming more fragile and more sensitive to disruption. If you're like most people, you probably just accepted this as part of getting older, part of life getting busier. or attributed it to stress or hormones in general, without really understanding the mechanism. But here's what's fascinating. Progesterone decline is incredibly predictable. It follows a pattern. We can almost map it out based on age and reproductive history. This isn't a mystery or something unique to you, even though it certainly feels that way at 3 in the morning when you're the only one awake on your entire block. This is a physiological reality that affects millions of women, and the more you understand it, the more empowered you become to actually do something about it. Like this video if you're finding this information helpful, because understanding the science behind your symptoms is the first step toward real solutions. So let's talk about why this happens. Progesterone is produced primarily by the corpus luteum, which is the remnant of the ovarian follicle after ovulation. During the luteal phase of your menstrual cycle, progesterone production ramps up significantly. This is why many women find they sleep better during certain parts of their cycle, and worse during others. But as you age, your ovaries gradually produce fewer and fewer eggs. Your ovulations become less frequent and less reliable. Your cycles might become irregular. Some months, you might not ovulate at all, even if you still have your period. When you don't ovulate, you don't form a corpus luteum, and therefore you don't get that surge of progesterone that month. Over time, as this happens more and more frequently, your average progesterone level drops. This is a completely natural part of aging. Your ovaries aren't broken or failing, they're simply responding to the biological reality of aging. But just because something is natural, doesn't mean you have to suffer through it without support. And that's what a lot of women don't realize. You don't have to white-knuckle your way through years of poor sleep just because progesterone is naturally declining. There are evidence-based interventions that can help. Before we talk about solutions, let's talk about what progesterone decline looks like in practice. If you're a woman in your 40s with declining progesterone, you might experience several or all of these symptoms. You might struggle with sleep onset, lying in bed for 30 minutes or longer before falling asleep, even though you're tired. You might have middle-of-the-night insomnia, waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning and being unable to fall back asleep for hours. You might experience early morning awakening, waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning whether you want to or not. You might feel like your sleep is restless and unrefreshing, as though you were tossing and turning all night, even though you technically got enough hours. You might also notice some daytime symptoms related to this poor sleep quality. Persistent fatigue that doesn't improve no matter how much sleep you get. Brain fog, difficulty concentrating, or a sense of mental fuzziness. Increased anxiety, especially in the afternoon or evening. Mood changes or irritability, particularly when you're sleep deprived. Difficulty regulating your temperature with night sweats or hot flashes becoming more common. Increased pain sensitivity or muscle tension because your body isn't getting the restorative sleep it needs to repair itself. These symptoms can all be connected to progesterone decline, and they're all reversible with appropriate intervention. Now, one important thing to understand is that progesterone decline happens at different rates for different people. Your genetics matter. Your overall health matters. Your stress level matters. Whether you've been pregnant and how many times you've been pregnant can influence your reproductive timeline. Whether you smoke, drink alcohol, or use certain medications can all affect your hormone levels. So while we can talk about general patterns, your specific situation is unique to you. What matters is that if you're experiencing sleep problems and you're in your 40s, it's absolutely worth investigating whether progesterone might be a factor. Let's talk about solutions. The first thing to understand is that there are multiple approaches, and what works best depends on your individual situation, your preferences, and your risk factors. One approach is bioidentical progesterone supplementation. This is progesterone that's molecularly identical to the progesterone your body produces naturally, derived from plant sources like wild yams or soybeans. When taken properly, typically as a micronized powder or oil-based capsule, bioidentical progesterone can be incredibly effective for sleep. The typical dose for sleep is between 100 and 200 milligrams, taken an hour or two before bedtime. Many women report falling asleep faster and staying asleep longer within just a few nights of starting. Bioidentical progesterone is different from synthetic progestins, which are used in birth control pills and some hormone replacement therapies. The distinction matters because bioidentical progesterone is generally better tolerated, and has a more favorable safety profile, particularly for women who are perimenopausal or who have concerns about hormone therapy. That said, progesterone supplementation isn't appropriate for everyone.
If you have a personal history of certain types of cancer, blood clots, or liver disease,
you'll want to discuss this carefully with your doctor. If you're still menstruating regularly, you might want to time progesterone use to the luteal phase of your cycle to mimic your body's natural rhythm more closely.